Iowa City is a unique community. This uniqueness is shaped by the people who contribute their ideas, their gifts, and their energy to the life of Iowa City and the university. Welcome to a series of biographical interviews of special women and men who have affected this community. Their contributions have been valuable, their lives creative and full. What brought them here? Who influenced them? What contributions have pleased them the most? These and other questions will be explored during this series of interviews entitled, Tell Me Your Story. Helen Rossi is one of our community's most outstanding volunteers. Ask anyone at university hospitals and the Ronald McDonald House, and they will tell you of the thousands of hours she has given to both institutions. Ask the hundreds of families who have benefited from her help and generosity, and they will tell you of all the time she has spent with them. With her Irish red hair and sparkling eyes, Helen Rossi abounds with energy, enthusiasm, and goodwill. In 1973, she co-chaired the first all-university hospital volunteer program. This program has grown from 50 to 10,000 volunteers. These men and women have given more than 800,000 hours to University Hospital. Helen, through her efforts and energy, helped the dream of a Ronald McDonald House in Iowa City become a reality. The home houses critically ill children, many who have traveled long distances needing extended treatment and care. Helen herself has given over 12,000 hours to the Ronald McDonald House and University Hospital. This translates to about 6 years of full-time work. Quite a remarkable fact. In 1984, she was named by the Iowa chapter of Beta Sigma Phi Woman of the Year. In '89, she received the Governor's Volunteer Award, and in 1992, she was named the recipient of the Nine Who Care Award given by KCRG. She is the chair of the 1993 Emerald Ball, which will raise much-needed money for the Ronald McDonald House. A native Pennsylvania, Helen has lived in our community for 27 years. She and her husband, Nick Rossi, have raised 4 sons in Iowa City: Nikki, Christopher, Robbie, and Tim. Thank you for being my guest, Helen, and tell me your story.
Well, thank you, Ellen, for having me today.
Your story, I know, because I read your bio, begins in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where you were born in May 1932. Tell me a bit about your first family and your parents and their expectations of you.
We grew up in West Philadelphia. I have a brother, John, a sister, Nancy. My mother and father were very devout Catholics, and we were raised in private Catholic schools. They were very outgoing people. My father, I've always thought about him. I'm so proud of him. He's the oldest of eight children, and when he was 9 years of age, his father died, and he had to leave school and go and work in the coal mines up in upstate Pennsylvania. Then he worked there, and he finished his elementary education and graduated from high school, and then went on to Temple University in Pennsylvania. My mother lived in Philadelphia all her life. She was a dynamic person filled with energy. She loved people. She was the secretary and treasurer of a big building firm in Philadelphia. And I seem to benefit, my sister and brother and I benefit a lot from them.
Are they still living?
No, they're not.
I see.
Unfortunately.
And you went to a Catholic school, St. Leonard's Academy. And did you know it when you were growing up what you thought you'd want to do?
You know, I was always in and out and involved in so many things. But I worked in many different, as I say, involved in many things. And then I thought maybe I'd like to go into nursing, but I really didn't think about it after I finished high school. So I went and took some courses at Penn and finished my first year there, and then was going to go to nursing school at Philadelphia General Hospital, which you know as well as I do.
Right.
But the nuns called me from the academy, and I needed a summer job, and they sent me to this fabulous job that I stayed there until I was married.
And tell me, how did you meet your husband?
We moved out from West Philadelphia to the suburbs. And we lived across the street. Nick was in medical school, and I was in school. And then when I finished and started working, we started to go together. And we were married in 1956. And he was in a surgical residency at that time. And he finished his surgical residency in 1960. By then we had 2 wonderful children, Nikki and Chris. And then we started our life away from Philadelphia. We always thought we would go back. Nick thought he'd go and practice in Philadelphia. But we came out to the University of Iowa.
And that was 1960?
1960 we came here, and Ellen, would you believe it, my mother was so upset because she still felt that that was an undeveloped part of the country.
The Wild West
And
or
Wild
something?
West, it was just marvelous. But then she found out there was a J.C. Penney's there, and she knew that I'd be able to clothe these children. But she came out shortly after we moved here.
And did she give Iowa City her blessing?
She loved Iowa
she?
City. Then my dad came out, and he loved Iowa City. And we just always have liked it. But we left Iowa City in 1962 and went to the University of Kentucky in Lexington, Kentucky. And we were there for 2 years. And Nick did a fellowship there. And by that time, we had Robbie, so that was 3 children.
3 boys.
3 boys. And my father called me after Robert was born and said, now what are you naming him? Well, Nicky is named Nicholas John. Christopher's named Christopher Robert. And we just loved that name of Robert, so we named him Robert. And it wasn't until after Timber was born that I realized that, well, he told me. He thought by the time I got to the 4th boy, we should have named it after him. But his name was John Aloysius.
Aloysius, yes.
So we named Nicky Nicholas John, and we thought that would suffice, but you know, he still thought there should have been a John Rossi.
There's a wonderful story about your mother coming to Iowa City and visiting and getting to know very well Gretchen Harshbarger. Tell me that story.
That is a wonderful story. We were building the house, and we had a terrible problem with our landscaping. And the builder said he was just going to put the cement wall around. Nick said, oh no, because he had been a visiting professor in Japan, and he wanted a quiet garden. So we had these wonderful neighbors, and they said, you should call Gretchen Harshbarger. Ellen, I didn't know a difference between grass, a weed, a daffodil, anything like that. And I was really nervous. I called her, and she said that she just couldn't come. In the meantime, Papa Rossi had become very ill, and he was living with us. So my mother came out to help me because I had these 4 little boys. And finally someone met Gretchen, and she said, she has an unusual problem in her back that I think would be a challenge for you. So she called me. She came out, and she and Nick designed the back. Well, she came there, and have you ever worked with Gretchen?
Yes, I
well,
did.
You
and
know the
for
energy.
people who don't know, who are new to Iowa City, we must say that Gretchen Harshbarger was an outstanding, helped form Project Green, and was a landscape designer, and has written a book. She is now deceased, but she is one of the gems of Iowa City.
And my mother had every bit as much energy and talent and loved gardening. They hit it off. That she would come every day and work with a landscape architect, and my mother would make her lunch, and then the 2 of them would go different parts of the house and take a nap for half an hour. But she was there at 8 o'clock, and I think about that. And that year, she was 70 years of age. I'll never forget one day, she didn't like where a railroad tie was. Now, they're heavy, those railroad ties. She just took her foot and kicked the railroad tie right in place. But they had a wonderful time together. And that's what my family loves about Iowa City. No matter who you are, they welcome you into the community. And all my friends did too. They were just, well, you couldn't help but love my parents. They were just outgoing, fun, and they loved young people.
Well, you certainly provided them with some young people, with 4 young boys. But tell me, when you were so busy being a mother and a wife, how did this volunteering that seems to run in your blood, Helen, more than most people I know, how did this start? What was the genesis of this?
That was interesting. When I was 13, my mother was very active in the community, and so was my father. And she had a very dear friend of hers who was the dietitian at the hospital, and at Misericordia Hospital in Philadelphia. She called my mother, and she said, it was during the war, we don't have any money, and we need help. So I thought, oh, this is going to be a great job. I could just see me doing all kinds of wonderful things at 13, running all over that hospital, rocking babies and everything. And I got there, and the biggest shock happened to me. I washed dishes for 2 years, and I hate to wash dishes. So in 1972, it was in March of 72, the phone rang one afternoon, and it was before we moved into, no, it wasn't in March. It was earlier than that. It must have been in January. Before we moved into the house, I got this phone call from a wonderful, wonderful fellow whom I dearly love, and that's John Colleton. And he said, Helen, how about if you and Julie Powell be co-chair and help develop a volunteer program? And all I could think of, oh, geez, am I going to have to wash dishes? And I told him no, that there wasn't any way I could do that, because I didn't know anything about starting a volunteer program. So I talked to this friend of mine, never realizing that she was the one that told John Colleton who to pick, and that was Jean Eckstein, who I feel has more talents, and you talk about volunteering, that woman is outstanding. So she said, Helen, you can do that. You and Julie will be great. And we had the best time. So in March of 72, we worked our tail feathers off and getting to that hospital until we started. It'll be 20 years this January.
And it's gone from
50 volunteers. Do you know, this year, Ellen, we just gave $1 million from the gift shop earnings to the patients at the University Hospital.
1 million.
Just last month that happened. Isn't that great? And the gift shop started, you know, in a closet. And bless her heart, that Marion Kretzmeyer, you know, she started that gift shop, and she brought that thing from nothing to where it is today. Trained the people that are doing it today,
And you have both men and women, young and old,
Yes.
volunteers at University Hospital.
I gave a talk not too long ago. Our volunteers range from about 14 to 8. It was in the 90s they were. And they just love it. I find that lots of people come to the volunteer program because either their children are raised and they're ready to go back to their career, but they need to be with people. And what better place? That place is just, it does fantastic things for so many people.
Well, as if you didn't have enough to do, you got so involved in the Ronald McDonald House.
Well,
for people who maybe have not heard about the Ronald McDonald House, how did that come to be?
Well, you know, actually, Ellen, Tim, our youngest son, was the one that got me involved. He developed leukemia when he was 13. And after he was in chemo for about 1.5 years, and when he said to me one day, you know, Mom, all these kids here that are getting chemo the same as I have, who have to travel such a distance, they don't have any place to go. And he said, I have great support. Well, Ellen, we had support. I mean, he got sick July 4th, and I'll never forget that day. We're walking out of the hospital that night to go home, change clothes, when Margot Jurek and Betsy Boyd came to stay with the boys. And, you know, we hadn't told anybody anything. And that night, Tom Boyd and Dick Keogh stayed all night with us in the hospital with him. And Rhoda and David Vernon and Sue and John Stroud. We had a support group. I didn't realize that later on, that's what you need. So I went to my friend John Colleton, and I said, John, Timmer thinks we need something. And just at that time, they were beginning to think we need a Ronald McDonald House in Iowa City. So not just me, not just my family, but I got my friends involved, and we worked really hard to raise money. And it wasn't going anyplace because we weren't getting any money, we weren't getting anything. So I called my friend John Colleton, and I said, you know, John, nobody knows about the Ronald McDonald House. We can't get the word out. We need a site. And I'll never forget that. I had gone to Chicago that weekend and to stay with Sandy and Susan Boyd. And that was like on a Thursday. I went in there, and that Sunday, Sandy said to me, knocked on my door, I was in bed, and he said, you know, Helen, they found the site. I said, where is it? He said, they don't want me to tell you, got to wait till you go home. So we came home, and I saw him with John. The next day, I was so nervous because I had looked all over this place for, a site and apartment houses and so forth, and they were so expensive, and there it was. Do you know, after that, Dottie Ray's husband died, and that was our first memorial contribution, and it was so large.
It was in honor of Bob Ray.
It was in memory of Bob, and it just took off.
there.
And it was, it just happened to be a blessing, and it worked wonderfully. We raised, from 1983 to 1985, we raised $1,250,000. Families come, now, what is it, 1992? Families come from 48 states, all over the state of Iowa, 99 counties, and we've had close to 13,000 people stay at the house. We charge $3 to $10 a night. It's a sliding scale. But if unfortunately, something wonderful came out of Tim's illness, and all the children have volunteered in the house. Nick has volunteers financially. We couldn't do it without Nick. He's just been so supportive of the house.
And these children can stay from
Yes.
2 weeks to months.
From overnight, we have one family that stayed there 11 months. It's remarkable what that has done. The community has been outstanding. The state has been outstanding.
And you have donated quite a few hours, and that translates into some money. Is that correct? Isn't there a monetary gift?
To go back to our volunteer program.
Yes.
When the volunteer program started, we have always wanted to do something for the Ronald McDonald, for something, but there wasn't a move there. We needed a mission, is what we needed. And of course, everybody was involved. Susan Boyd was our first. I could never forget that day she called me and said she wanted to be a volunteer. I mean, she really has a lot to do. And then, of course, it opened up to Rhoda Verdon and all kinds of wonderful people. And that's what, we had such a nucleus this place is going to go. So in 1983 and 82, I guess it was shortly after the house was well on its way, I went to the advisory committee at the volunteer program and asked them if we could do a cookbook, and they gave me $38,000, and we developed a cookbook of recipes from the volunteers at the University Hospital. It turned out to be a gold mine. We raised
What did you raise with that?
$140,000.
By a cookbook?
By a cookbook. But Joyce Summerwell, the whole lobby was filled with cookbooks. You walked in there and there was the poinsettia.
You must have had a fantastic marketer.
In 1 week we raised $10,000, so we knew we were taking it. But then I reached 5,000 hours, and bless their hearts, the volunteer program gave me $5,000, and because the Ronald McDonald House is a part of the volunteer program at the hospital, because the Ronald McDonald House will not run without volunteers, and it's a wonderful way to recruit volunteers through the University Hospital. So they gave me $5,000, and we gave it to the Ronald McDonald House. We opened the house in July 1985. We were open 7 months when we realized we had to finish the lower level. But we didn't have any money because we opened without a mortgage, and our expenses were at that time $160,000 a year. So Rhoda Vernon got her $5,000, and bless her heart, she gave it to the house. Irene Guider got $5,000. So with $15,000, we took that money and finished the lower level, giving us 4 more bedrooms, making it 21 bedrooms. And of course, we filled it up. And we were able to finish it. $15,000 is a lot of money. But the Iowa Association of Homeowners came in and finished it and didn't charge us anything for labor. So it's been grand.
For people who maybe just moved here, the Ronald McDonald House is located across from Hawkeye Carver Arena in a beautiful wooded area.
It's just
now,
lovely.
You're heading up the Emerald Ball in March, I think, and that monies will go for what, Helen?
We're putting in when we built the house, we were cutting corners, and we shouldn't have cut that. We're putting in a sprinkler system. When I say it's a fire safety sprinkler system inside the house. The Emerald Fest hopefully will draw a lot of people, and will encourage people to please join us for that evening. And we're raising as much money as we can to help defray that cost. To put that system in, it's $125,000. Which is certainly a lot of money. And I'm hoping that the Emerald Fest will be a success. And Dick Summerwell and Elizabeth Trapnell Rawlings are our co-chair for that event. And there's about 80 people on the committee. And we'll be moving ahead very, very enthusiastically soon.
Helen, looking at all of your volunteering of University Hospital and the Ronald McDonald House, what has that experience taught you about yourself?
Well, you know, I really felt I love people. I'm a people person, and I love to do things for people, and the volunteer program was wonderful. But it wasn't until after Tim got sick, and I walked in the footsteps of parents who have seriously ill children, I realized there's so much out there to do. And I feel that many times I go home and think, I didn't do much today. I take home more than I give. I have had children come home and stay with me when their parents, like one mother, came and her child had leukemia, and they couldn't keep him in the bone marrow transplant at that time because he wasn't ready for his transplant, and the mother was delivering a baby. She went into labor. I met her on the elevator with this child, and he said, "Helen, you can do it. You can do it. Come with us." She's in labor. Everybody in the elevator was panic stricken. I was scared to death. And we got there and to the delivery room, and she was really ready to go to have this baby. And she said, "I want Eric to stay with me." And they said, "Well, he cannot do that unless you have an adult." And the next thing I knew, they were all looking at me. So we went and went with his mommy, and Eric and I were there when the baby was born. And we brought the child. I brought him home because there was no place for him to stay. He couldn't stay at the Mac house with an out an adult. But not just me. Lots of our volunteers do that. Sometimes I'm overwhelmed at the amount that they give, and just so proud that we have such a wonderful organization.
Have you found, though, as you recruit volunteers, that it's harder now with women especially, going back to work, or has there been just an outpouring of people?
We just did this year alone, Ellen. We oriented 1,038 volunteers just this year. Many of our volunteers are students who are interested in health science fields. And I think there's other people out there that would love to join, and we just have to reach them. But we don't really seem to be...
It doesn't sound like you're lacking.
We have so much to offer, Ellen. We have 15 departments that we use volunteers in, with 80 volunteer jobs available to them. That's great. They can do anything they want, from rocking a baby to...
working in the gift shop?
Working in the gift shop.
Greeting parents.
There are some of our volunteers that do not want to work around patients. They just can't cope with that. But there's other things that are available. There's a place for everyone.
Okay, your story is so much of volunteerism, but so you're a mother with 4 children. Tell me briefly about where your children are and what they're doing.
Nick and I have 4 magnificent children. We're so proud of them. Nicky's in Houston, Texas, and he's a chemical engineer. And Christopher is in Washington, D.C., and he's a professor at American University. He finished his Ph.D. from Hopkins last year, 2 years ago. Robbie's in medical school, and Tim is going to go to graduate school. He's in Washington, D.C. with Chris. Although they live in the same building, they live in different apartments.
Here you are, one woman with 5 men in your life. How
well,
wonderful.
You know, Nick was always so busy and was never home much. So working with the children, I was always involved in what the children did. They always came first. But they also got involved in a lot of volunteering. And even today they volunteer. All of them do, in some capacity. If they're home here, they go over to the Mac house. Correct. And in Washington or Houston, there's a place for them to go. In fact, Robbie just called up, and he's involved with the family in Omaha, Nebraska. So
you've imprinted them wonderfully well.
You're so kind.
I want to ask you, looking back, what event or person has made a big difference in your life? Who's influenced you, or what's influenced you? I know your mother, you said.
Yes, she was just great. But you know, I came to Iowa, and we had no family, like many people do. But Jean Eckstein is, to me, she is one of the most remarkable people I've ever met. She is really a volunteer of the decade, as far as, and many people will agree with you, will agree with me. But friends, I have wonderful friends. They're caring and they're giving. And of course, when Tim was so sick, what would we have done without our friends? and the young people, like I said, Tom Boyd is very special to us. And he and Rob were such close friends, and Dick Keel. They helped to make, they came over when Tim had chemo. Those people they impressed me. I thought, how giving, these are young people. But then, one man that I greatly admire, and he's so proud of the volunteer program in the Ronald McDonald House, and that's John Colleton. He's just outstanding. And of course, when the volunteer program, you know, is working on another project, when I reached my 10,000 hours, I got $10,000. And I thought, we need to go someplace else. And we're going to have an adult house, which is going to be named after the volunteer program.
Oh, where will this be located?
Well, the 5th floor of the Center Hospital, do you know where Boyd Tower is? Well, that's Center Hall, which Dr. B would call, whom, of course, we couldn't have a volunteer program without Dr.
Bowler.
That's right. And it's going to be from C51, that whole floor up there, and it's going to house about 150 patients, families a night. And then I asked for 20 apartments for our long-term families, excuse me, like with bone marrow transplant, heart transplant. But we're going to have about 12. And hopefully we will reach 20. Again, I went with Roger Gingrich. Roger Gingrich is the physician in charge of adult bone marrow, and he wants it so badly. We went to the volunteer program, and we asked them for $100,000, and they gave it to us. So that's ready to start our adult program, which should be starting in '93.
Congratulations, how wonderful.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Helen, what do you do to relax? You're a bundle of energy.
I relax all the time, except, well, there's certain things I'll get involved in that may be it. But I love to garden.
Oh, good.
I love to swim. I love to read. And I love to be with people. And I love to go to the beach. There's only one thing I love more than water, as far as something like that is concerned, is water. I love to swim. And we go to the beach in the summertime in Ocean City, Avalon, New Jersey.
Avalon, New Jersey. Well, it doesn't sound like you relax too much, and you've got another project going, and I wish you well on the Emerald Fest. I called it the Ball, but it's Emerald Fest in March, and what a wonderful cause, the Ronald McDonald House.
They're all wonderful. They truly are.
And your story is remarkable, and I thank you for being the guest today.
Well, I thank you for having me as your guest.
My guest has been Helen Rossi, a committed and enthusiastic volunteer for University Hospital, the Ronald McDonald House, and numerous other community and civic organizations. Since 1973, Helen has given over 12,000 hours helping individuals, helping families, and institutions. In 1984, the Iowa chapter of Beta Sigma Phi named her Volunteer of the Year. In '89, she was given the Governor's Volunteer Award, and in 1992, she was named a recipient of the Nine Who Care Award by KCRG. This community, the university, and the state have benefited tremendously by Helen Rossi sharing her energy and her love. Her story is one of unselfishness, commitment, enthusiasm, and generosity. She has made a difference.